Good evening, everyone, and welcome to BT's Fly Tying Friday. Today, the 3rd of January, we're going to be working on the house and a little bit more. The weekly tip, I've got 3 options for setting quill wings for older people like me. You'll know better after we talk about it a little bit. Anyway, we're the Beattys from Boise, Idaho, and we're going to start tonight with Gretchen working on the pattern. Do you want me to tell them about the pattern while you get your stuff together, some of the history of it and so forth?
You go ahead and do the history, but I'm ready anytime. Go
Okay.
ahead. You just like to do the history, so go for it.
I'll do the history. The history is complicated in that the fly that Gretchen's going to do has numerous names. We're going to use one that's most often used called the house and lot, and house and lot variant, H&L variant, hairwing variant, um, just plain house and lot. And what's interesting in today's world, though they often have the name variant on them, they do not have variant hackle. We'll talk about that a little bit more when I get into the pattern that I'll be demonstrating. But the H&L variant, house and lot, has a mixed history as finding out exactly what's true. I was told by a source that I felt was very reliable that Dan Bailey originally had this pattern in the fly shop called the hairwing variant, and it was renamed during the Eisenhower administration, and it had something to do with people having a house and lot and having a good thing. Well, whatever it was, and however it got its name, there's another story that says a fellow made so much money down in Colorado tying the house and lot or tying the fly that he was able to afford a house and lot. Those all sound like good stories, and they're opposite ends of the extreme. But whatever it is, I can absolutely guarantee you, having fished this fly a lot, it is dynamite, and it's in our top dozen of ones in our personal fly boxes. And my lovely wife, Gretchen, is an expert at it, and she's got a couple of surprises for you.
Well, I have chosen not to tie the variant variety. I'm tying the hackle regular size. And there were, as I played with this pattern over the week, I discovered 3 different ways to tie the tail and the wing, 3 different materials. So first of all, I will describe what I've done. We'll go over here to the materials. Well, maybe I should hold this in front of the,
You won't take
front of
that
the
out.
vise. Yeah, I'll just hold it right here.
And you're going to the materials, you're bringing those over, right?
Yeah. So these are the 3 different materials.
Just a little closer to the there you go. They come in focus better.
Yeah, like that is always in my way. I can't see the monitor.
Yeah.
This is the regular one, which is regular calf tail or calf tail. This one here,
raise it just a little bit. There you go.
This one here is tied with poly yarn, and that's what I'm going to tie it with today. And then this is tied with a makeup brush. And this is a new makeup brush that we got that Al found online, and it's not a synthetic, it's a natural fiber. And so we'll take a look at those materials. So here is, of course, our well-used calf tail. We're not going to use that. And here is this makeup brush. And I've done some painting in my history, and I can see this as a paintbrush too. I could make some trees with that and do some really cool things, but it also is really nice to tie with. It's very soft. And
soft but stiff, isn't it?
Yeah, soft but stiff. Exactly. And of course, the tips are all straight, so you don't have to do any stacking of it. And it tied, we talked a little bit about tying with brushes the other day when I was tying with a nylon brush on, and I think that was just last week, wasn't it? And it was so slick, and and it had no compression at all. This particular one that I tied with it's natural and sort of has some compression. It's not quite as slick.
Huh.
And do we want to show them that? Where's the packet? I thought we set the whole packet out of them that we got. The little kit of the.
It is. I'm going to go into that in a little bit here.
Oh, okay, I
It's
thought,
back
okay,
here.
you'll do that later.
Yeah,
All right. So we'll go over here to the materials. So what I'm going to be using then is our Fentex poly. And I've already taken quite a bit of the knots out of that. So it's all ready to go. Black and white thread. Got some tools here that I'll be using. My hackle, and of course, pheasant tail.
maybe
Like a pheasant tail.
peacock.
Peacock.
Yeah,
Where did I come up with pheasant? I
I don't know.
didn't get enough sleep last night, so who knows what I'm saying. I'm not
Why don't you
responsible.
hand me one of your hooks over there, and I'll get it in the vise for you.
Get that away first.
Yep.
I'm besides doing this with a size 12 regular dry fly hook. Now the first thing while he's putting my hook in is I need to find a nice, get a nice piece of this peacock. There's lots of ways that you can take the fibers off of it so you have the bare stem that you want, because the first part of the tying, of course, is just with the stem. So but what I do anymore, I just find it's just as easy for me to take my thumb and my forefinger and I go against the grain.
What she's doing is stripping it because the body is half regular peacock and the other part of the body is strip peacock.
Now, the question is how much strip do you need? So if you come over here to the vise, what I try to do is get the length of the total fly plus about the gap. And I find that's about the right amount for me to have.
Would you like to go over the recipe while get started here?
Okay.
All right, there you go.
So I've got my peacock all ready to go. I've got my size 8 or size 12 hook, my black thread, and instead of calf tail, I'm using poly for the wings and tail, the peacock stripped, and brown hackle, and the head is thread. So I'm going to start this with the white thread is the first thing I'm going to do. So get my thread out. And I want to start my base wrap about the 1/3 point. Notice I keep tension on the waist end so that I get a nice, the threads butted up against each other because of the tension, and we'll come back this way. And cut off the excess. The next thing I'm going to put on is the poly here, and cut off a bunch. And for a size 12, let's take a look at this. Let's see, that would be the wing. Do it this way. I was going to do it a different way, but this way I'm more comfortable with. I'm going to level that out. Tie this on here. We want the tail, the length of the shank, which goes from behind the eye to the bend. And we'll set it in place. And remember, when you bend material up, like I'm going to do for the wings, it pushes forward. So I don't want to tie this on here because I might be pushed too far forward. So let's take about a wrap back. And I'll just do regular finger thumb tuck. And we'll just wrap back. And I hold the material up so that I don't get, and that was a trick when I first started tying. I could not figure out how Al kept the tail material from going down the side of the hook. And I had watched him, and I finally said, oh, so if you hold it up like this, it's not gonna go down on either side too much. A little bit more on
And that
that
one did
side.
slip a little bit.
Yeah. So what am I gonna do if it slipped a little bit? Oh, well, gosh, I think I'll come back here and I'll just come around like this. And I'm just gonna take one gentle wrap under there, come back to my tie-off point, and that'll keep it from slipping down anymore, don't you think?
Yep.
There we
Good-
go. Look at
good job.
that. I think maybe. Now, what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to take this. Oops, the other direction. Since I've got bulk here, I'm going to bring this up and do a loop. And I'm going to tie it down in the front.
You're building a hackle platform both in front and behind the wings, aren't you?
That's right, so
Yep.
that they will be the even amount. And I'm going to hold this, get a pretty good angle, make sure I've got it kind of angled, and so I can have a gentle slope. Let's tie this down. Let's see how this is. Oh dear.
Just give me your phone, I'll get rid of it.
Sorry about that. I don't know if you could hear that or not. That was my phone. Okay. Then we'll just take this loop and cut it. Now I'm going to go do some crisscrosses. Let me bring these up.
And though we have sold many thousands of these to fly shops and so forth, the one that Gretchen's tying right now, the polywing, is the one that's in our personal fly boxes because it's a really great material and it never gets waterlogged like hair will. It's and it catches a heck of a lot of fish.
Okay, I think
Flotation
I've got
ability
those
is a little bit
posted
better
pretty
than
good.
calf.
I'm not real happy with my cutoff there. There we go. That's better. Okay. If you take a look at that wing, I think I've got it a little far back. I'm not happy with that. I think I ended up pushing it back as I was. So let's see if I can get it a little further forward. See if I can correct myself here a little bit. That's better. Ah, that's looking much better. It was just about 3 turns too far forward. All right, now I'm going to measure the shank length, measure my wings, determine I need to take about that much off. And I'll do the same thing back here. Just a little bit off that tail. Now I probably should have taken a little bit more out of that. That's pretty full wing. I usually like my tail and wing a little sparser than that. But I think I'll leave that alone and we'll just go with it. If you take a look at the one I showed you earlier, it was a lot sparser. It's easy to get too much material. Okay, I'm going to take one of those deals where you want just the right amount. Cross your fingers for me here. And the excess. Gotta get my hackle. And we just want some brown. I kind of like this one. This is a nice long one here. Let's take it. Want to strip just a little bit more off of this leading edge than I do the following edge. That just helps my hackle lay better on the first couple of turns. Put that down. Oh, you know what I forgot to do? Let's get that done. We need to go with the black thread now. Change thread. Fine with that. Shiny side forward. Dogleg that back. Yeah, that's a little overdressed on the wings and tails. You need to be careful about that. And I wasn't real careful this time, but there you go. There's a
Any questions for Gretchen?
wild looking H&L. If you
Yeah,
take a look at the one I tied yesterday, as far as the wings, let's see, here it is.
yeah.
This is my much preferred amount of wing and tail.
Yeah, about
You see
on
here?
half,
Yeah,
looks
I
like.
have that. Yeah, I got it carried away.
Yep.
Al,
Okay,
where
any
do you,
questions?
where do you fish this? This is Jerry. Where do you fish that?
Um, any broken water, I guess, would be the easiest way. It's not a great Spring Creek fly, but it's just an absolute dynamite fly. And just to give you a comparison, it's superb on the Madison, the Yellowstone, and the Gallatin. But if you fish the Paradise Valley Spring Creeks, you want to do something else, like some of the flies that we've already taught you. But this is not
I
one
like
for
to
that.
tie. I can remember. I can remember very vividly floating the Yellowstone and fishing on that scum line right along the side that where there's kind of a little riffle in the scum line, and you can usually get a fish out of there with that fly. Also behind those big boulders.
And I've got a question here from Neil, and he wants to know if the loop technique is the way that you tie all wings on, duns, tricles, etc.
No, I do. I tie them on. It depends on what the body is going to look like. There was another way to tie that, which I probably should have done, would be to tie the wings and then go back and do the tail and cut it off. There's those.
That's the way I usually do it.
Yeah.
I tie the particular piece of poly on at the front of the hook, loop it up, tie it back down, and then wrap to the end and cut it off,
Yeah.
and you're done. But it was a little bit overdressed as far as the amount of poly. However, it would fish fine, but it wouldn't be one of the ones we toss in the sales bin.
No.
That you do use the loop. What I'm thinking of is I always figure eight my wings, right? I have a straight line and I don't create a loop. And watching you do the loop, which I hadn't seen before for wings, seemed to be a much easier way to create mayfly wings, spent wings.
What I like about it is you want the wings, each one of the wings should have the same volume in it as the tail. So you need twice the volume for the wings, and then you've got the tail. So when you have a loop, you automatically have the right number of fibers for the wings as compared to the tail. That's kind of what I liked about it. And I also find that the loop easy to do the dividing and the crisscrossing.
That's what I saw. Yeah,
Yeah.
thank you.
We've got several questions in regards to the poly yarn. Okay, in the poly material, it's called it's called Fentex, spelled Pheentx, Fentex. The PH is sounded like an F. It's a Canadian company, and you want to go on either Amazon or eBay or wherever, or to your local store. It's Fentex Craft and Slipper Yarn. Slipper, like you put on your feet. That's what it's made for, is crocheting that kind of stuff.
They also have it like at Michael's and Hobby Lobby and
Yeah.
Craft Warehouse, all those places.
And it is not the same thing as EP fibers, as I understand it. However, I have very little experience with EP fibers.
Hey, Al, on the Fentex, remember you get more colors in Canada because they have a lot more colors from the
Correct.
place in
That's
Canada.
where we buy ours from the company in Canada. We have an account with them.
I'll paste the URL.
How can you see that?
Can I see what are we talking?
This Jeff,
Oh, okay, Jeff. Let me add you as a spotlight so you can be right next to us. Let's see, add spotlight. There we go. That's the stuff right
Okay.
there.
there it is right there. I get that on Amazon. It's also good for posting and stuff like that too. It's great.
Hey, Al.
Yeah.
Al, so the Fintex is the brand, not the type of polyyarn.
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, and you'll find other kinds of poly yarn that on the internet. You really want the Fentex stuff. I've bought the other stuff, and
Some of it's real crinkly.
some of it's crinkly, some of it's really straight. I just like the way the Fentex works. And if you find something else that you like better, use it. There's no reason you can't. Are you ready
Hey,
to?
Al, this is Jerry again. Yeah, Al, this is Jerry. Have you ever run a dropper off of that fly? That would hold up well,
That's
wouldn't
the only way to fish it. Our favorite fly setup for the evenings when we weren't guiding or on the river or whatever, when we were just taking a quick run to the river after dinner, we'd go down to the Gallatin and we'd fish that is a point fly, and on a dropper we'd put a renegade about 18, 20 inches or whatever. We just slaughtered them. Of all the crazy things, when I say it was close to home, we lived in Bozeman itself. We would go to where the Gallatin River ran, right next to the golf course out at Four Corners, which is about 7 miles west of Bozeman. And who goes to a golf course to go fishing? Well, anybody is sane at all doesn't. Well, we'd go there and we just catch fish like crazy because who's crazy enough to go to a golf course? It isn't the place you would think would be the best fishing. I'll give you another tip too, and this is a guiding tip. Take the Lower Madison as an example. I cannot tell you how many times I floated that, and I would watch the guides in front of me. Well, we're about a quarter of a mile from the boat launch, folks. Start cranking them in. We're getting ready to pull in, and I don't want to get everybody tangled up in their fly lines. Okay, good. Down the road they'd go. Right then, it's about the time old Al would pull over. He said, folks, we're going to wait till all these boats get in and out, and then we're going to float on in. And the last quarter of a mile to the boat launch was dynamite. Oh, it was so good you can't believe it. Because you know what? Those fish saw a lot of boats. They didn't see a lot of flies. Anyhow, we ready to, any other questions before we switch gears here?
And I think Dolores wants to see the fly one more time, Gretchen, if she could.
Sorry.
Oh, I just threw it away. Get the good one and show them the good one.
Okay.
I have a box of rejects and I just tossed it in there. I didn't really care for that fly. This one is much better. So let me get that up a little higher. So you see how sparse those wings are by comparison? It's kind of like a calf tail. You don't want to use too much, and I just used way too much today.
Okay. Back
That
to
kind of looks like calf tail, doesn't it?
that comes out pretty good. And I'll tell you the one, I've just made a last minute change in the program, the way we're going to do it, because I'm so intrigued with this stuff. I am going to put on a tail and wings really quick out of this, just so you can see. I'm not going to do the whole fly, but I'll just crank out a tail and wings, and then I'll go into the regular fly that I was going to do.
Time with that stuff.
This is some fun stuff.
Can I ask
And
one question?
I misled Gretchen on one thing. This is synthetic of some type. It sure don't. I did too, and I thought that's what I ordered. I clicked the wrong thing, and
So how did you figure out that it was synthetic?
well, when I went and got the link that we're going to share with everybody tonight. Yeah, it's a synthetic. But
Well,
anyway,
it sure is a nice synthetic, and
it's
it
beautiful
did
stuff,
it seemed
yes.
to compress better than that other stuff, and
Yep.
it's
It's-
not as slick. It's not as shiny.
it acts like hair, but
It does. It acts more
doesn't.
like
It isn't hair, but it's
straighter than regular hair.
some really nice stuff. Here, let me pass you your materials.
I've got my hands full, but I can
Yeah.
use my third hand, I guess.
There we go. I'll use that hackle that you just threw away. By the way, when I was getting the hook for you, I dropped one on the floor, so be careful.
Al and Gretchen, could I ask a question?
Yep, you sure can.
With the H&L, what's the difference between calf body hair and calf tail? Could you use either?
Either. In fact, we did that all with all of our calf tail. On our smaller flies, we use calf body hair.
Yeah,
Okay, thank you.
the calf body hair, often you'll get it's only certain parts of the calf skin just got long enough for sizes 8s and 10s.
Yeah,
I mean,
mostly
it's
small.
great hair when you start going down in 14s and 16s and stuff like that. Jesus, it's just as wonderful as can be, but it's
We tied with
anyway.
a lot of calf body
Yeah.
hair.
anyway,
Thank you.
I am
I
going
don't know
to,
if we have any calf body hair right now.
yeah, I've got a half a hide up there.
Oh, okay.
Set that aside. I don't want to forget to do that, but I'm going to do that when we start sharing.
Okay.
All right. Let me put my materials over here at the material area. Now, one of the things that I need is a hook to just do a quick tie for you. And I'm tying on size 14 tonight, which is unusual for me. But anyway, I'll get over here at the vise and I'll put this hook
Why
in.
do you say a 14 is unusual for
It's
you?
unusual for me to tie on a presentation anything smaller than about a 10
Oh.
because we like people to see. But the fly that I'm going to end up tying tonight will actually be about a size 8 on a 14. I think we'll explain it all when we get there. But right now, what I want to do is get your white thread, if you would hand it to me, please. Because this stuff is just phenomenal. That's all I can say. It's phenomenal.
Al, when you get a minute, would you share the link to that for us?
Yeah, I will as soon as we get through. One of the things I found about sharing links, if we share a link now and anybody signs on to the program, they don't get the link. It's only the people that anyway, it's some kind of screwy thing with Zoom. I don't know exactly
So
what it
you
is.
sign on after everybody's here.
So I'll put it on there after I get through with my pattern. But I'm just going to put a thread base starting at about a third back. And I'll just go to the end of the shank and I'm going to come back about halfway. Now, what's really great about this stuff is it really acts like calf body hair, but it's already stacked and cleaned. Just love it.
Very nice.
All right, that goes away. And we'll get ready to put on the wings. And I'll just pull out a bundle of that stuff for the wings. I'm going to guesstimate it about what's about double. No, that's too much. That looks about right. It just is, it's like tying with hair, but it just seems so unreal to me after years of tying with hair and reaching for a hair stacker that I'm not reaching for a hair stacker right now. But anyway, let me tie this wing on, this wing bundle on.
Don't you notice it compresses more than that?
Oh,
that black
yeah, it
stuff we have?
compresses almost like half body hair. I am just stunned at the way it handles. I've never had a synthetic handle like this.
I sure didn't think it was synthetic.
Yeah, well, It's either that or I don't know how to read, one of the two.
Well,
and
that's a
that's a very good possibility. Yeah, you're agreeing too darn quick there, sweetheart. I can tell you. All right, all right. Let me pull this back and I'll pull the wings out.
Something I found when I was working with it the other day, if I got too much, so I say I got too little on that left wing, I could just, even though I'd had a couple of threads through it already, I could just move it over and it worked fine. It's really easy to work with, I guess is what I'm saying.
Yeah, it sure is. Well, it's just amazing. I wish we'd have found this stuff a long time ago. We'd have found a source for bulk and we would have not bought a lot of.
Now,
Well, there I just did what we did last week, which was a setup. It's now ready to be used later for whatever we want it to be. And there is your hair wing fly that's not a hair wing fly, or the start of one anyway. Anyhow, enough of getting off target. That's one of these crazy things. I hadn't planned on doing this. Okay, guys. Variant hackles. Well, the variant fly, from what I can find on the internet, and of course there's nothing that you can't find on the internet, whether it's true or not is hard to tell. But it supposedly started in the UK, and the guy that's credited with it is a Dr. William Bagent, or something like that. And he was a medical doctor, and from the mid 1800s to the end of the 1800s is when he passed. In somewhere in his past, he had communicated with a American author by the name of Preston Jennings. And anyway, the first appearance of the variant type fly was in a book by Preston Jennings, and that published in 1935, called The Book of Trout Flies. And anyway, what it is, it's a fly that's larger than what's considered normal, and normal is considered to be a gap and a half in length. And typically the variant is 2 to 2.5 gaps.
the hackle.
The hackle, I'm sorry, thank you, sweetheart. 2.5 gaps. And in fact, what I do, just to make it easy, if I'm going to tie some variants, I get out let's say size 12 hooks. I'll grab a box of size 6 hackle. I always just take 2 sizes bigger, and that works out to be about right. I mean, it's close enough to be. Now, one of the things that I kind of disagree on history is that people were going for this look. And I want to show you something. This is from a Jack Dennis book published in the mid-1970s. I think it was around 75 when it was published. But anyway, I want you to notice the standard, quote unquote, hackle on the Fall River Special, the Adams, the Spruce Fly, and the Rio Grande King. I've got 2 red arrows showing the distance that it extends beyond the hook gap. And that's 2.5, as near as I can tell. And look at the others, and they're about the same. I'm not picking on Jack Dennis or anyone per se, because I was a commercial tire all through this time. And I know for a fact that we could not get size 18 hackle. It just about didn't exist.
So what you were saying is that hackle was bigger than standard?
It was bigger than standard.
And that was because it was easier to get that size?
The size that you could get. You made do with what you could get. And today it's kind of the opposite has happened, and a lot of flies are undersized. Example, an undersized hackle goes on a stimulator. You put it just about a gap wide is what goes on a stimulator. But anyhow, that's not what we were talking about. I think it's as much an attraction to the fish as it is a matter of that's all that was available. But anyhow, I'm going to get into a fly that I call the no-name variant, because my purpose tonight is not to share a variant pattern with you. My purpose tonight is to share a couple of tying techniques, if you will, tips, philosophies, whatever you want to call it. But I'm going to be using a dry fly hook size of 14 in this case, but I'll be doing it variant size, so it'll be about a size 10 or 8 fly on a number 14 hook. And I'll be using black thread, brown barbs for the tail, a floss body. The rib is going to be thread. The hackle is brown, and of course the head's thread. And moving over to the materials, I may as well start getting some stuff out here and see what we have going here. First off, I'm going to reach over here and get some thread. I'm going to get the black, and I'm going to be using orange. And I'm not saying you need to have orange on this particular pattern. It shows up really good against the green background. A green fly would not show up so well. I'll grab a hook and a couple of examples, and I'll come over and get my other materials after a bit. But for now, the first thing that I want to point out before I put my hook in the vise is I'm going to put a road mat fly up, and we're going to talk about this for a minute. All right, you can see the tail is extra long. You can see the hackle is extra long. And if you draw a line of how it would set on the water using like this, you'll see that it would be at an angle of about like that with the tips of the tail on the water and the tips of the hackle on the water. It's and that's what I'm tying, what I'll be tying tonight. It's a really simple fly, very similar to the Dr. Bajent fly. But what I want to point out here is one of Gretchen's and my rules of how we handle materials. Look at the tail. The tail is nice and straight out from the body. That's the way we want it. Now, if we wanted something different, we could certainly do it. And the reason that it's straight out like that is because the tail is anchored to the hook shank. It is not anchored with a thread base under it. Here's what happens when you put a thread base under it. Let me move this up here. Now I want you to notice I've got those bodies as parallel as I can get them, but you see how that tail tilts downhill on the one behind? That's because I put a thread base on the hook first, and then I put the hackle barbs on top. On the one that's in the vise, the hackle barbs went against the bare hook, just like I'm going to show it. And that's an important thing. There's only let me rephrase. There's only about 4 or 5 different materials that I do not use a underwrap of some type of thread. And hackle barbs is one, squirrel is another, synthetic fibers like some of the stuff on those brushes, and microfibets, some of that stuff that goes on a bare hook, anchored in place with thread. But I'll set this aside. I'm going to set the road mat fly aside, and now I'll bring one of these hooks up here, and we'll get started.
Al, why is tail pointing down a bad thing?
It's because the dimension. Okay, let me show you something here.
You said, why is it a bad thing to have it down?
Oh, why is it a bad thing to have it down?
Yeah.
It's not a bad thing to have it down. It goes wherever you want your fly thing to go, you want it to go. But if it's headed downhill, how is it going to do a good job of laying on the water and supporting the fly? You know, and you can answer that one yourself.
I guess the idea is going downhill, it might poke into the water instead of laying flat.
Right, and it's also a pivot point rather than being a flattened point. It's just not, at least when I was taught to tie flies, the tail is supposed to be straight out the back. Unless you're having dinner with A.K. Best, which we did one night at our house in Delta, and A.K. Best is sitting there and telling us why the tail should go up, and I'm telling him why they should go straight out the back. And you know what? Even after several drinks, we still didn't agree with each other. So anyhow, back to where I was. What I'm going to do to start this fly is start a thread base right up front here. In other words, I'm going to put a thread base under the area that's going to be my thorax, or the hackle covered area, or whatever you want to call it. I'll just set that down. So I'll just get started there and give myself some room at the front end, and I'll just wrap back here. And that's about how far back I want that to go, the area that I'm allocating, if you will, for the hackle placement. So now I'm going to go over to materials and grab myself my bundle of hackle. I pulled some hair feathers out of this package of whiting tailing packs that we got when we were at the farm last time. I walked away with a great big bag of this stuff. It wasn't packaged yet, so we got a really good deal on it. And I'm just going to pull several of these barbs out here. Well, see, make sure that they're nice and straight. I'll grab the barbs and hold them, and then I'll tear the feather away from the barbs. And that way they stay nicely lined up. I want the tail to be as long.
That's better.
Okay. As the complete hook and just a tiny bit more. Maybe a half a gap or something like that. Cinch that in place. And then remember when Gretchen said you hold up in your material? Well, you can do it on tail material too. I'll just wrap to the back. Now I'm just going to leave this hang right there. And I trimmed off the waist. Now I want to talk to you for a moment because I'm going to put on the body next, and I am not going to counter wrap the rib. And I'm sure that someone is going to ask me why. Well, first off, the only reason you counter wrap a rib over body material is to strengthen that body material. And for me, the body materials that need strengthening are things like peacock and ostrich and stuff like that. But a double layer of floss, whether it's forward wrapped or backward wrapped, doesn't make a lot of difference. And I want you to think of something now, too. Remember what a crisscross wrap is? Everybody does them. Don't even think about them. It's one of the most important pieces of knowledge in your arsenal for tying flies. It's the crisscross wrap. It's going the opposite direction when you go the opposite direction on the hook. Give you an example. You wrap back on the hook shank and you are applying, as a right-handed tire going up and over, you are applying clockwise wraps. And when you go forward, yep, you're applying clockwise wraps again. But if you had to duplicate those wraps, you'd have to counter wrap them to make them that.
So if you were tying them from the front, you would have to.
Correct.
Yeah.
You'd have to do it all from the back. Now, there's an example that I use to explain this. Let's say that Jack Gillis decides to get the fly tying group together in Arizona. Let's say Phoenix. So he's going to get to Phoenix however he wants to get to Phoenix. Gretchen and I are going to go down to meet all our fly tying friends down there in Phoenix, and we're going to drive down Highway 95 to do that. We'll drive on the right-hand side of the road, headed south, and that will be on the west side of the highway. Now, when we return home to Idaho, we'll be on the right side of the road again. We'll be headed north, and that'll be the east side of the road. Same thing happens in fly tying. You are counter wrapping when you're crisscross wrapping. Anyway, enough said for that. The next thing I'm going to do now is tie the body. And I'm going to do the body out of a nylon stretch. I want you to notice, though, that I'm leaving my thread hanging right there at the back of the hook. You'll see why here in just a minute. I'm just going to start my floss base towards the back. There we go. And I'm just going to wrap back until I just about reach the thread that I left waiting there. Then I'll trim off the waist and take a couple of more turns, stopping right there at the back of the shank and then working my way forward, doing the floss body until I get forward almost to the return spot, and I'll just finish that off. Okay, there we go. Now I'm going to wrap forward, and I'm doing a crisscross wrap with my black that's on the underneath side, and I'm kind of just binding the whole body area together as I advance my rib forward. And I want to make sure it's all nice and even, so I'm rotating the vise to do that. There we go. Oops, I got one that spread out on me there a bit, so I'll just take my thumbnail and change its attitude. There we go. Now, we're going to go back to our materials area. And I've got hackle here, and I've got peacock. And I'm just going to grab them both and run back over to the vise. And we're going to start with the peacock, and I'm going to tie that on first. And I already know that this is a little bit stiff right in this area, so I'll tie that on, and then I'll, there we go. Bind it in place, and then I'll come right back here to get my hackle and prepare a hackle feather. And I'll just, that one looks like a good one right there. And I already know from having used this type of stuff that the barbs right here towards the back of the feather where it joins all this fuzzy stuff is, they tend to be a little bit bigger, and then right in this general area here, they'll start to get even up and they'll be consistent in size for a while, and that's what I'm looking for.
So they're longer towards the back.
Longer towards the back, and they get down in the size that you actually want to use once you get past this webby area. I'll cut that off. Now I've got the part that I'm gonna tie on. Now I'm going to take the edge that goes down against the hook and take off some extra. And I'll just tie that on. I can't remember who showed us that trick. I think it was Dutch or someone anyway.
I'm pretty sure it was Dutch.
Who?
It was Dutch.
I'm pretty sure anyway. That what that does is it takes the barbs that would have been on the edge that lays against the hook first off, and they're going to go either to the right or to the left. They're going to stick out one way or the other, but you get a lot cleaner start if you take them off and let the ones on top kind of camouflage the ones that are going to kick out all over the place here in a few minutes. Oh, I forgot something. I have to wrap my peacock first. And again, this is another one of the things that Dutch shared with us. And we use this trick all the time in years past, but it was only for positioning hackle. We never thought about using it for a peacock and all these other materials. But anyhow, what I'm using, or I'm not doing right here, is the thread hanging on the bobbin keeps that peacock tied up against the previous turn. It just hangs there and does that. And I also keep weights in my bobbin, and that sort of helps in that area too. And now I'm going to one more turn, and then I'll tie that guy off. And I'm talking, I just wrap it and get it done. Now I'm going to put on the hackle, and I like dubbing body material under my hackle. It's just a personal preference, and so that's what I'm doing here. And we'll just tie that off. And we'll do a whip finish. And I'll cut that. And I'll break that feather. Set that aside. And have a variant. But the main thing that I wanted to share with you is you don't always have to counter wrap the ribbing material on your body. It's based on the way you put the body material on, number one, and number two, what the body material is. Does it need to be strengthened, or is it fine the way it is? That's But those are the decisions that you have to make. And the other thing is tails out straight unless you're AK best and you want them to go up. Or if you don't care and they go down, then down is fine too. Questions?
This is Jerry. I have a question.
Okay,
You mentioned waiting your bobbin.
correct.
I haven't seen that before. What do you do to put weight in there?
Oh, okay. Well, first off, if you want the more details on it, go to flyfishersinternational.org,
Mhm.
click learning, click music library, and one of the tips and tricks that we have in the music library is weighting bobbins. And Marvin Nolte from Byron, Wyoming got us started on weighting bobbins, and it's tough to deal to work without it. We just really love the way it feels. And here's how you weight the bobbin. Let me get over here.
Sorry to be off topic, but
Oh, that's
I
all right.
caught that.
Well, we are. Everything is on topic, especially tonight, because I'm only wanting to share techniques and help you with your tying. And a technique picked up here or there. But anyway, let me pull this out. Now I have are the weights that you use. They're from the spin shop, Cabela's, and like you said, finesse weights. And you see what those are?
Let me take a picture of it.
Okay, well that's the
Yeah.
weight, and it fits just down inside the spool of thread.
Al, did you pull the ends off of them? Because mine had
Yeah,
little
put the
ends on them.
label up there.
Yeah, I did. You gotta cut the ends off so it'll fit inside the spool, and I'll put it inside the spool right now. And so it's in there, and it's just a little bit of weight, holds things just a heck of a lot nicer. Marvin always thought that it really helped him in tying salmon flies and keeping that material held in place just a little bit better. I don't know. I just like the way it does. And you'll see, I'm going to refer to it here in a little bit when we get into the weekly tip.
When you're tying on a married wing on a salmon fly too, you can just hold that married wing, wrap over it, let go, and just let the weight pull gently down on it. And it keeps it from splitting. It's really cool.
Do you know what size those are that you use? Because it comes in about 4 different sizes.
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
3/8
okay. Well,
ounce.
I want you to see that one right there has got a little loopy thing here. I had to cut that off because that won't fit inside the spool of thread. What you got to do is cut that thing down so it'll fit inside and still have room so that your bobbin will hold it in place without running into the ends of the weight.
Ah,
You
yeah.
cut it out with a hacksaw and you smooth it up with a sander or something like that. And let's see, this is
Al?
this is a
Hey,
this is a 1/4 ounce, and I got some others here that are 3/16.
Yeah.
And it's also a good way if you're wanting to do some drop sinkers and swing a fly. And I know you guys would never do this. You never use a spin rod to present a fly, but in case you would, it's an option. And as I get older and can't reach some of the places that I go to, I'm rethinking my thought. I've been working on a book for several years, whether it ever gets published or not. It's called The Aging Angler. And I'm just kind of keeping track of all the things I've had to change and do different.
That's what we did with Dad too. Remember
Yeah.
in his final years when we would take
Yeah.
him to a little pond to fish, we didn't try to have him fish with a fly rod. We
No,
just the spin with a fly on it.
But we call it spin fly.
I got an idea that I've been using for many, many years on weighting a bobbin. And I just use a 1-inch long piece of 1/4 inch diameter brass rod. You can buy them at most hardware stores.
Sure.
The other thing is just buy a machine bolt at the hardware store. And with a hacksaw, you cut off a 1-inch long piece. It's not too heavy. I don't like the idea of lead because it gets on your hands. It's dirty. And the brass is nice and clean. And it's just the right amount of weight in a bobbin.
Good idea. And that's quarter inch that you're using, right?
1/4 inch brass rod. It comes in either 1 foot or 3 foot lengths. A little more expensive now than it was a few years ago. And that's why you could just, just buy a bolt and with a hacksaw, cut it off.
Well, it's time for the weekly tip. Setting quill wings, 3 options. And I've had to make some changes.
You keep talking about being old, and today I was thinking, 80, almost 83.
Yeah, working on it. Yeah, I don't know what's going on here anyway, but
That's not old.
I keep thinking he's 60.
would you hand me my piece of paper there, please?
Look
You
at him.
guys are so funny.
He's 60.
I love it.
You look 60.
Anyway,
60.
I'm telling you that I've got three tips for setting wings tonight. But I didn't have to worry about this because I set wings through the 70s. That's everything was quill wings. And then in the 80s, it started changing a little bit. But I set a lot of quill wings, and I never did it the proper way because I didn't know the proper way. I taught myself, and I just pushed my fingers together, and I'd give a funny little twist just as the thread would go down around the thing. And after a lot of them, they'd come out perfect every time. Well, something's happened. And I can make those fingers come together, but I can't make them do the little twist anymore. And the wings came out all messed up. Well, I didn't realize this had happened to me until several weeks ago, late last year. In other words, 3 weeks ago, I was doing some quill wings on here, and they weren't coming out the way I wanted them. And I could not make my fingers do what they're supposed to do. So since then, I have been coming up with this system of setting wings so that they are perfectly straight on the hook and I don't have to do my funny little twist. And I tried the Eric Austin method where he puts the loop around and holds them and they all slide down together. I'll do some of that, show you some of that. But and then Dutch has a way of going around it and up and all that kind of stuff. I'll talk about that. But I've got 3 methods. The first one is the 007 tool. That's not James Bond. The 007 tool. The next one is the spinner tool. And the last one is the flat finger technique. Let's get over there and just give me a hard time. Anyway, folks, let's get back over here to the vise. And I'm going to
I'll try to control myself.
Gretchen, you're losing it there, sweetheart. I just don't know what to tell
It's
you.
one of those days.
Yeah, it's the way it is. It's the way it is. Anyway, one of the thing that had always worked so well for me is I'm going to have to use my right hand to show you what I'm talking about. Is I always set my wings like that. One loop through there, give it a yank down, and it was done. But I could feel the loop of thread going between my fingers, I would do this little routine. At a certain point in the process of the loop going down through my fingers. Well, this is my left hand, the ones where you do that. I'm lucky to even be able to bring them together. It's just, they don't close like they used to. And so I've come up with a couple of ways of doing it a little bit different. And I'm going to start by, I'm just going to put some make-believe bodies on these, and then I'm just going to put on a wing, and I'll use each tool and show you how it works, and you can decide if there's anything there that would be helpful to you. But I'll just start by putting a black thread in place, cut that off. Let me get my
This reminds me of Sue Parson working on her wings for the award.
And I'm just going to wrap back forward. And I'll finish that off. And I'm not going to worry about nice, smooth ribs, but it'll come out pretty good. All right, now I'm going to set that down, and I'm going to introduce you to 007. 007 used to be a spinning tool for spinning dubbing loops until I cut part of it off, put a hook on it, put some extra weight on it so I could balance it with the weight that's in my bobbin. and I put some 007 stainless steel wire on it. Now, when I get through with this, if anybody wants some 007 stainless steel wire, I have about 1,000 yards of it. I'll get it out and show you what it is and what we used to use it for back in the day, but I found it is really good for this particular tool. Well, I'm going to set that tool down momentarily while I get these duck quills. I've already pulled some slips out of it, and I just have the slips here so in the interest of time, they're already paired up and they're ready to go. Now, the way this thing works is you set it in place wherever you want it to go. Let's say you want the wing there. You'll hold it up there, and now you're going to bring this tool up here. Now, first off, let me set this aside for a second and explain to you what happens when we put a loop of thread around. First off, as we go around the item, as an example, let's say this was the quill. You'll come up and over. The thread goes down around the hook again, and so you have thread torque going this way. You have downward pressure on top of the quill slips, and thread torque going that way. And a lot of opportunities there for it to misalign your quills for you. Well, one of the things that Eric Austin does is he takes and loops it up and over, and I'll show you just what he does here in just a minute. He brings it up and over like this, and then he holds both sides and allows it to sink down, leaving the bobbin to wait to set the wing for him. We still have to deal with the fact that you've got upwards and downwards torque on one side and the other side. And with my fingers the way they are, I just was having a difficult time with it. I needed something that would allow me to pull straight down on that slip and with an equal pressure all the way around. So I came up with 007. Come on, get over there. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to move this up here like that, make sure that I've got both of the sides of the 007 wire in the pinch of my finger. And now I'm just going to pull that down and set the wing, just like that. One turn of thread up and over to hold it. Take off the 007. And I messed up. And that's just about how that thing almost always does for me. Now, I could take another turn around there, and I will. And for some of you, this may be just the absolute trick, but it hasn't been for me. Now, I'm going to shorten this up. It's going to make a short wing. I don't care about that. My main thing is to show you how it compresses that slip.
Maybe if you trimmed off some of that, it'd be easier to get 007 on. There you go.
There you go. Thanks, dear. Yeah. So what I'm going to do this time with 007 is just put the loop around there, pull it down, and we'll take a complete turn. Now I'll take 007 off and just finish setting the wing. And that set the quail pretty nice. And here's an extra bonus tip. I just discovered this tonight. You can't always see what's on the other side, and you have to rotate your vise. I got a thing called a set of dental tools to kind of help me keep my teeth clean. And the one thing I never could use at all was the mirror. Well, there's a dentist mirror. You can look at the other side of your vise with that. And I got a nice set there. I got a nice positioning of the wings. It's on top, and it's on top and on this side as well. So not that that's worth a darn, but I just had to throw that in for the fun of it. Because sometimes I don't have enough turns of thread on there. So this didn't work out real well for me. I can make it work. Some of you may find that it works really well for you. If you do, I've got 1,000 yards of the wire.
Hey, Al, could you use that technique to do one-handed fly tying and set the wings?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah,
You know exactly what I was wondering if you were going to
Yeah.
ask me about that or not.
Yeah,
Now
that's
I'm not gonna bother putting the body on this hook.
but Brian says, don't these wet quills go on the same as the wings on a no hackle? There are some good videos on Lawson putting
No,
them
they do
in
not
there.
go on the same. The wet quills, these go on different, and that's a whole different ball game for this. This is just for setting wings on um, quill wings,
Quill
wet
wings.
flies, or salmon flies, anything that has that type of a wing. But the other thing that I'm going to introduce you to, the second tool, is almost identical to the first, except it's just the dubbing whirl with a hook. I got rid of the Y thing and all that kind of stuff. So I'll be using that, and that helps pretty good. Let me get another wing up here. You're going to be surprised though when I get to the one that actually worked the best for me. But it was the last thing I tried. Otherwise, now I'm going to take this tool, turn my hook to the front, and hook it right over my bobbin. See it? See it's right there? And I'm just going to bring the bobbin up and over. And I'm going to do the Eric Austin routine. But I've got an even amount of weight on both, on one side and the other side, to set it in place. And now I'll just take that out of there. So anyway, there's that one. Let me just tie it off. All right, now the last one is the one that I've settled on. Absolutely, it's breaking all the rules, but I don't much care. As long as I can go back to setting wings like I used to. Somehow or another, this thread slipped on me. All right, there we go. And here's the last quill right here. And this one is, what I used to do is I would pinch my forefinger and thumb together, and then I would roll the trigger finger like I showed you. I can't do the left hand, it just won't do it. But I've tried a whole lot of different things. Jim Ferguson taught me something about where you take the fingers and you do this to them. You take your the flip off finger and the thumb and you bring them together and you pinch like that. Well, that don't work because I can't get those to come together either. If I push them together, I can hold them together, and that's about the only way I can get them there. So I got to thinking, what I need is two flat surfaces. I've got my thumb. I got the flat surface of my thumb, and I got the flat surface of my finger. Instead of working down here on the end, what if I do this?
That's weird.
So what if I do that instead of trying to do that? Well, that's what I'm doing. And so now I'm going to get my quill here and put it in place. Set it the way I want it there. And there it is, set perfect every single time. Just the way they used to.
I'll tip that a little different so that we can see it on the camera.
Okay, I didn't put enough wraps on there and it slipped on me, so let me try it again here. Let me get that last quill and I'll redo it here. So I'm using the trigger finger way up high. Just the way I want them to be, each one. And I'm very pleased with that. So does that work for you? I have no idea.
You were going to show the
It's really an
there.
alternative to the pin trap, isn't it, Al? I mean, that
It's
seems to be,
it's a different kind of pin trap is all it is.
yeah. Well,
And I'm not trying to say it's the best thing, but when you're an older person, some things quit working as good as they used to. And the pin trap, I can't do it anymore. I have to do something different. And I've discovered I can do the pin trap like that rather than the way I used to. So
Al,
all
do
that
you
keep-
do you concern yourself with whether your thread is flat or corded?
when I'm doing that, I don't care.
Okay.
Any other
Alex, Neil,
questions?
I
Yeah.
can't thank you enough for doing that. I just finished doing some micro dry flies, short wing emergers in size 18 and 20. And the far wing, if you don't pay real close attention to it, the far wing always slips slightly under. It's very difficult to keep it on top. So Eric's way and the last way you showed, you just changed my flight tying life. Thank you very much. The other quick thing I'd say, and I guess you can't get them in America anymore, is that sometimes teal is easier and nicer to work with than mallard. It's not as wide and it doesn't crunch like mallard does.
Well,
So
anyway,
Al,
this
you
is
need to
some of-
give it a name. You need to give this move a name. This is a different move. I love it.
Al's
The Beatty
modified
pinch.
Well,
pin trap.
Gretchen laughed so hard at me. It's going to have to be. Let's see.
You have to name it.
BPM.
I'm going to
Beatty
have to
pinch
get
method.
something where I'm going to give Gretchen a jab on this. He said, yeah.
The L pinch.
How about
Yeah.
the laughing
You can have a
finger?
The L pinch.
I'll have a contest for the naming of your convention, Al, and then whoever wins the prize gets them a stainless steel wire.
Al's
Stainless steel wire. We were going to talk about that. And let's see here.
The Beatty pinch.
This is
There you go.
this is a spool of stainless steel wire that I was talking about. Now, it used to have 1,700 yards on it, and I've used quite a bit. And what we used to use this for, I did a ton of this back in the 80s, is we used to do, we would tie a fly and put a piece of stainless steel wire about that long on it that would then be used to mount it under glass for, displays. Now they do a lot of it on plastic pins, but back in those days, we were using a piece of wire that would make it seem, especially on a dry fly, you could have that wire come out through as part of the wrapped hackle, and you'd swear to God that fly was mounted on the hackle tips, is the way it would look.
So,
But anyway,
Al?
yeah.
Yeah, I've got, if you spotlight me. Now, the Atlantic salmon group, when we're setting those married wings, you might have 17 to 24 fibers. And it's really difficult to keep that wing from folding over. And so we ran across these things here. This was the one I made. And it's just got a stainless steel wire going up. But I used one of those electronic post things that you can undo, and then you can take this out and change the wire. And I just used a copper tube, and then I filled it with buckshot or number eight, and boy, that sucker's. And then when you go over the fly, and you can kind of hold on to your bobbin and hold on to this. You got the wing set, and then when you drop this, it really compresses that wing.
Collapses it equally on both sides, too.
Yeah, and it's the same one that you did. Now, Ted Berkeley, he decided, of course, to do something better, and he got some brass that is solid brass down here. This sucker's really heavy. And then he did a deal up here where he put the ends of the wire down into these little two holes, and it's an Allen wrench that sets this part down. And the area right in here has he's got some sort of a washer in there. And he did it in two different sizes. And you can, and he used a different color there. And then what he did is he took one of these big plastic tubes like that so that you won't bend and ruin that top, the wire form. But I would like some of that stainless steel wire.
Jim, send me an email requesting it because I'm telling you right now, unless I'll forget it. And I got some other things to try to keep track of right now.
Yeah.
But I'll send you some of that. And anybody else that wants it, if you're so inclined, send me a buck or two for the trouble. But I got, as you can see, I have some.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, Jim, thank you so much.
And
Yeah.
I would
What kind of broke my heart, Jim? You just broke my heart just now. I thought I developed something, and you know what? In fly tying, you don't develop anything. Somebody else figured it out before you did. Long time.
Well, on that Al's finger job, I noticed that when you went up with the thread between the thumb and then over the top, you pulled down, and it almost wanted to put some torque on that far wing slip. If you come down around and come back up and pull up, then it tends to pull that thread down on both sides rather than adding the torque to take it over.
Yeah, he does that with hair, but you've never really done it with quill wing.
I always say quill wings the other way,
Yeah.
and it's a habit more than anything. And I understand that how that the loop method and all that stuff. It just habit takes over after a while. Anyway,
one other comment, Al. This is Chuck. On the like what Jim was talking about on the Atlantics. I've seen some of the guys when they have many fibers. Maybe you don't have to do it with a duck quill, but if you put just a drop of water right at that tie-in point, they compress a lot easier in a more uniform way. It softens them up. Just so that's another way of operating. But if you're quantity tying, you probably don't want to mess with that. But
anything that works.
Yeah, for sure. And all I was doing in the last couple of weeks is trying to come up with a way to make my fingers or to make up for what my fingers wouldn't do.
One thing I noticed on your fingers and my fingers, the distance between the when you put your thumb on that first finger and you do it on that middle joint area, you've got a wider middle joint than I do.
Well, good. I got something better than anyway.
I have to go to the long finger to get that distance.
Okay. Well, anyway, if we don't have anything else here, folks, or do you have some more comments? And we got sharing tonight on Beattys. This is where we share different tips and tricks with all of you. And I'll be starting out tonight with 2 items. First off, it will be the mystery spinner fly project we'll be talking about. And then the next one is one that I'll be talking about, and then can go out with all of you. But the mystery spinner fly report. Well, I've got one. Davey Watton from Arkansas. Actually, he is a fly fishing professional from Wales who migrated to the U.S. A bunch of years ago and now lives in Arkansas. And anyway, he sent me these pictures. And on the left, you can see his. It's a hex fly, and it's got a wing very similar to what we're talking about. The other one is at the top center is a caddis, swimming caddis, and the other one is, I forget what it was, but anyway, it's didn't quite fall into the same thing, but I thought it was an interesting looking pattern. Anyway, continuing on with sharing, I wanted to talk to you all about this. And what this is the kit of
These.
the kit of brushes that we got,
Mm.
different colors and all this type of stuff that I think you could probably use the handles for fly tying tools after you use all the hair up.
I also bought a couple of other. Are these?
Those are synthetics and those are ones we bought, and we'll tell you more about them after we've tied with them. We just fell in love with the ones inside of the kit, and you saw how the wing and tails went together when I was messing around with that just a little bit ago. The other thing I wanted to do before I move on is to thank my good buddy Paul in Australia. He sent me a calendar, and it's a calendar of his community where he lives, and it's in Port in New South Wales, Australia. I think it's a beautiful place, and here are some of the other pictures that are inside. And my thanks to Paul for that. Really appreciate your friendship, my friend. But anyway, there's that. I'll set that aside. And now we want to go to Evelyn and have her share some artwork. There you go, Evelyn. You're now spotlighted if you want to share some artwork with us. And there's Gretchen's fly, the H&L. Wonderful. And there's the no-name variant.
Oh, gee, that turned out.
That turned out so much better than mine. You're hired. Yes, absolutely. Good job, Evelyn.
Letting me do this. I just really enjoy it.
Thanks a lot. Well, we sure enjoy having you share your stuff with us. That's it for this week, folks. Thank you so much for joining us. See you next week.